Welcome to Uncut. I'm Steve Adubato. Yes, we are coming to you virtually, but the substance of this conversation has never been more important. So Uncut is a series of interviews with prominent leaders of all stripes. We're putting these interviews out there. If you want to find out where we are, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We'll also be using some of these interviews on the PBS side, as well as on the News 12 Plus side, where we have some of our broadcast programming. We're honored today to be joined by our good friend, Tony Russo, who is the president of the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Steve. Good morning.
We will be able to be in the same room one day, not too long down the road.
But yeah.
By the way, tell folks who don't know what the Commerce and Industry Association is, who you are, what you do, and why you matter so much.
Yeah, so we're a general business organization in New Jersey. We're business advocates. We've existed since 1927. We represent about 900 companies. And what I enjoy about my job is we represent all sectors, right? So I get to speak to bankers and lawyers, accountants, manufacturers, utility companies. Colleges are members as well. We have about 20 colleges and universities. We have, hospitals as members. So, I really enjoy the fact that I get to really talk to people across the business spectrum and just hear, how they're doing.
Yeah. And the other thing is that we have a collaborative partnership, a cross-promotional partnership, a content sharing partnership with the Commerce and Industry Association. And Tony, let's plug this. We're taping on the 2nd of June. This may air later in some other venues, but on the 23rd of June at 11 a.m., Commerce is having an event, and we're doing it together. It is called Leading and Communicating During COVID-19. It's a virtual event. I'll be facilitating. Talk about why such an event is so important, particularly for your members right now.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate to have you, Steve, on that day. And I could tell you that we've already started to promote it, and it's really trending really good. And so we're excited about it. So thank you for doing it. But ever since this crisis began, right, I've seen across the board that companies are looking for that information, are looking for that guidance, that leadership. How do I communicate to staff, to vendors, to clients? And I think, you're perfect for that one, when you're given your background. So they really want to see and learn as much as they can as they adapt to the new normal. That's why doing that event is very important, and we're looking forward to it.
By the way, one of the things I've learned is that as someone who's involved in the field of communication, not just as a broadcaster, but coaching and teaching it, is when you're remote like this, I'll interrupt in a studio, and that's bad enough, but it's worse this way because you can't read the body language. They can't read you. But I also want to make it clear, because we don't want to turn this into a promotional thing about the event, which is on the 23rd at 11 a.m. You go on the Commerce and Industry website, which you see up there right now, CIANJ.org. But here's the thing. Yes, I'm facilitating that dialogue, but I'm going to tell you something right now. I learned from one of your members, one of the banks that are members of the Commerce and Industry Association, where I was doing a leadership seminar. One of the leaders of that bank said to me, Steve, leading and communicating during COVID-19 is like flying a plane while you're building it while you're flying it. And so the point is, I'll share my thoughts and best practices and mistakes around leading and communicating in a pandemic. So my point is this, Tony, we're all getting through this together and sharing best practices and mistakes. No one has the answer as to how to do this well. Talk about it.
No, and you make a good point. And I like to tell people there's no shame in redirecting or pivoting away from something that you acknowledge was probably not the right approach to it. So, that's part of leadership, is knowing when you don't have the information or you could be wrong. You have to understand that, you have to have that awareness, and then you have to pivot to something differently. So that's a great point.
Let's talk about the balance. I keep thinking about this. The balance between public health and safety in the workplace, doing everything we must do to protect our employees, and changing the workplace space, changing who's there, how many are there, how far apart they are, what the conditions are, but also profitability, meeting the bottom line, making your budget, which you and I talk about all the time. That's an incredibly difficult balance.
It is. And what companies are doing, we've had multiple events on, how do you disinfect your workplace? What kind of equipment do you want to buy? Well, you used a phrase before, and I want to highlight it. It's all about sharing those best practices, right? And industries can learn from each other. So how does the hospital do it? And we had Mike Marin on, and he was sharing his best practices.
From Holy Name.
From Holy Name, sorry, and Bob Garrett from Hackensack Meridian. And the nice thing about that is that was the front line, right, with the hospitals. And a lot of our distributors and manufacturers and just even banks, they learned about how did you clean your equipment, Mike? And so that sharing of best practices is important. And the more events that we do, again, going back to that information, educational, the more people appreciate that. And going back to what you said about profitability, what I'm amazed at hearing, talking to our members over the last 2 months, is they really did pivot. And I hate to use that word all the time, but they pivoted to these virtual events, these Zoom events, where they're actually making new contacts, going on to networking events. And despite the difficulties of the technology, they're still closing deals, some of them, and they're still, meeting new people. And it's fascinating to me because obviously you don't have to drive. You don't have to go to a lunch or a breakfast. You could do it, sometimes earlier in the morning, sometimes later at night. And it seems to be working well. And I think people are accepting the fact that this Zoom thing, WebEx, whatever you want to use, is probably going to be here for a while. And they just have to get used to it.
It's interesting, Tony, to your point. You mentioned Bob Garrett, the CEO of Hackensack Meridian Health, and Mike Marin over at Holy Name, both of whom have been with us. You can check out our website at steveadubato.org. Check out those interviews with Bob Garrett and Mike. But I want to say this. Think about hospitals. They have a strategic plan. They have a budget. And all of a sudden, they're not doing elective surgeries. And elective surgeries make up a huge part of their budget. So this is the thing I keep asking. And we're a nonprofit. We produce all of our programming, and we created this new series called Uncut, which you can find, by the way, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Tony is a nonprofit as well. We're all pivoting, as he says. But here's the interesting question, Tony. We're trying to plan out the rest of this calendar year. It's much harder to go beyond that because there are so many unknowns, so many things uncertain. Talk about that.
You hit it right on the head. And, full disclosure, we hold about 90 events a year. So that was our bread and butter, is doing in-person events. And we recently had a board meeting where, again, through our executive committee and our leadership, and we don't have all the answers now, but we're exploring alternatives, right? How do you, make these virtual events something that people are going to want to see and tune into? So again, you don't know, you can't plan too far out. For example, we have a major golf event every year.
I know.
Is that going to happen? Is it going to happen in July and August? We're working, like I like the phrase to borrow from Apollo 13, the movie, where you have to work the problem. And that's really—
Work the problem.
You work the problem. So the problem is, what do? Right? You have to collect as much information as you can. You have to talk to your advisors, talk to your leadership, talk to your staff, have a discussion, and then make a decision, make an informed decision. And a lot of these decisions, for example, with our golf event, and we have our main event is at the end of October. We call it the annual luncheon, and we get 600 people. We may have to do something differently today, right? So we're planning. And so I think it's important to be flexible, but you have to plan, you have to collect information, and you have to make those informed decisions. And you can't do it on your own.
Final point. By the way, we're talking to Tony Russo, the president of the Commerce and Industry Association. Check out their website at CIANJ.org. I want to remind everyone you can go on that website and also go on ours as well. You can sign up for an event that the Commerce and Industry Association is having on the 23rd of June at 11 a.m. Tony and I had an offline conversation. I said, Tony, we're doing a lot of this leadership development, as you know. Why don't we have an event called Leading and Communicating During a Pandemic? It's a virtual event. People will be engaged, involved. We'll share best practices. We'll talk about our mistakes. And it's the Commerce and Industry Association's credit that they keep doing this to provide information to our members. So final question before I let you go, Tony. With all the uncertainty, with all the questions, with all the fiscal challenges we all face, you've always been a positive, upbeat kind of guy. Give us a strong reason why we all should be as well, in spite of how difficult this is.
Because, again, to borrow from wiser people than me, this too shall pass. And we'll see the sunny skies again, and you just have to bear with it. Survive. If you could thrive, great. So you have to have hope. And I think hope is is something that we have to always keep in the back of our mind and keep moving forward. I mean, you wake up every day, you choose to be positive or negative. I found through the years, Steve, and I'm sure you would agree, people respond to positivity.
That's right.
People gravitate to positive people. So if you're not positive, you're not going to be successful. So if I had a choice, I'm going to go with the positive and just hope for the best.
Tony nailed it. I mean, we have to talk about being innovative, creative, make tough decisions, try to predict the future like you're Nostradamus or something, or Nostradamus. I got to say this, Tony's other point about having a positive attitude, that's nothing I can coach someone to have. That's nothing Tony can, or the magazine, the Commerce publication can tell you should have. The reality is it's a choice. I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but having a positive attitude is a choice. It's a decision we make, not just every day, but every minute of every day. So in that spirit, I know that Tony has that positive attitude. The folks at Commerce and Industry Association have it as well. And we're confident that the people who sign up on the 23rd at 11 a.m. for that virtual event are going to have it as well. We're all in together. This is Tony Russo at Commerce and Industry Association. I'm Steve Adubato. This has been Uncut. Thank you, my friend Tony.
Thank you, Steve, and good luck and stay safe.
You got it. Uncut. Catch you next time.